is going to cover the following items. We're going to just talk a little bit about new administrators and how the new administrative team started the year preparing for success. We'll share a few of the first week highlights, and then we're going to talk a little bit about transition plan as a new superintendent. I'll share the superintendent priority goals, focus areas, and objectives that the board has approved. And then we'll get some division updates. So you'll get lots of great information today to kick off our new year. At our new administrative team, we are about 103 administrators, I think, district-wide. That includes positions all the way from superintendent to cabinet, to the central office administrators, to principals, assistant principals, supervisors, coordinators, directors, and assistant directors. So there's a line of command in administrative team that covers all those job titles. We actually included this year, we added 22 new members to that team. So just about a 20% addition to our team this year out of the 103. Of course, we have new assistant superintendents, and we have I think it was 5 principals, including a 6th interim principal, as well as some assistant principals, a new benefits coordinator, and director of human resources. And so that kind of makes up the 22. All right, does that work for you, Kia? I think I finally got the right tab on full screen.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, outstanding. So just real quick, some of the first day highlights. So really excited. A lot of work went into preparing for that first day, and our administrative team had a back to school workshop that was really focused on about let's love our kids first, and let's focus on teaching and learning. Our words and our actions matter, and so let's move forward in trying to eliminate some of the distractions that are going around in the world around us, and focus on our kids. And let's begin by loving them first. So that was the general theme of our back to school administrative planning retreat. And our administrators focused, particular our instructional leaders focused on tools that would help them dig into the playbook. There was the Teacher Clarity Playbook, and it was a hands-on guide to creating learning intentions and success criteria. So it gave our administrators some really specific tools to help teachers be better teachers and to focus on student outcomes. So really excited about kind of refocusing our efforts on student achievement. All right. I wanted to talk just a little bit about some of the transitions. I think I got away from my slide too quickly here. Transition plan update. Many of you know that I officially took over on July 1st. That's when my contract began. I did have the pleasure of working closely with Dr. Lee for about 8 weeks after the board named me as superintendent. And just a couple of highlights from that transition plan. May and June were very busy months as part of preparing to take on this role. We have 29 elementary schools, and I met with 20 of the staff through staff meetings before the end of the year at the elementary level. And I have met with more than half of the school councils at the elementary as well. And I'm looking forward to finishing those visits here in August and September with school staff meetings and school council meetings. At the middle school, I had the great pleasure of meeting with all 7 of the middle school staffs before the summer break. And I've met with 2 of the school councils, so I look forward to meeting with the other 5 here this month or next month. And then at the high school level, I met with all the high school councils before summer break, and 4 out of the 6 high schools. I met with 5 out of their 6 high school staff meetings. So I got the others scheduled. So real exciting to have that opportunity to meet. And of course, the virtual connection makes it a little easier to do multiple sites in a day. But it's given me an opportunity to kind of share some vision for the district moving forward and continue to build relationships. So that's a little bit. In addition to those faculty and school council meetings, I also met in May and June with about 16 one-on-one meetings with our school and community business partners that have been influential in supporting PV schools over the last number of years. So it's been a true joy and opportunity for me to admit, excuse me, that was the admit screen that popped up there. That's not my task, but to connect with people in the community through this transition. All right. That again. Why we're skipping slides here, I think we are. I guess I'll stay right here on this slide regarding a little COVID update. Many of you recognize that yesterday we announced our mask requirement that starts tomorrow. I think it's important to note that these are not easy decisions, and they're not necessarily received well by anybody on either side of every issue that we have. Our mask requirement starts tomorrow, and it was modeled both in language and form and process after some of the other school districts around us had already taken that step. So I think and reach out to extend my thanks to the Washington and Madison school districts for sharing some of their work with us as we prepared. We also continue to try to provide some limited options for those as they would have had even in vaccination options from ADHS for vaccines such as DPT or measles, mumps, and rubella. So we model all of our forms, our communications, and our process after others who had gone down this road, as well as some related experiences in creating what we did when we rolled it out yesterday. That by no means is the process perfect. We have some bumps in there that we're still trying to work out with best intentions. I had hoped that it had been a little smoother, but overall, it's been well received. I wanted to mention that our numbers, that we still maintain a commitment to sharing information about cases, positive COVID cases in our district. And that dashboard is still up and will continue to be. And one of the things that was requested from our UPC leaders was the opportunity to have more frequent information. And so our team is committed to updating that information on Mondays and Thursdays. I think it's important to note that the numbers that you see are very fluid numbers. We know that, when we update things on Monday, sometimes those capture pieces of information that have been reported over the weekend to us. But we also know that sometimes things aren't reported in a timely manner. So people have to understand that those are fluid numbers, but they'll always continue to be rolled into the next available update. But we're doing the best we can with what we have. I think it's important to know that in listening to the request for more information, that we'll do that. It is a pretty heavy load on everybody right now with this COVID pandemic. Our teachers are trying to stay focused on teaching and learning. And it's very difficult. Our administrators are certainly trying to follow expectations from the county, and I'll talk about quarantine next. But it's one of those things that is not easy for anybody, and all of us would prefer that we were back in pre-COVID days where we spent our time focused on the job descriptions, the jobs we were hired to do, and helping kids succeed in our district and ensuring that their journey of excellence continues in the right path. Quarantining by Maricopa County Department of Health. I think it's important to share again that the public health officials are charged by state statute and administrative code for determining quarantine. They set the priorities, parameters, and as a district, we have been told to follow those. And of course, our district policies through communicable and infectious disease require us to exclude students who the county has deemed quarantined. I know it's extremely frustrating. It's frustrating for administrators, it's frustrating for teachers, parents, and particularly our students to be away as a close contact, to be away until they can get tested and return, or to be out that whole time is frustrating. We're working diligently to make sure that classwork is updated in Google Classroom, that teachers have the resources they need to provide to students who are in quarantine. We've also provided additional resources, avenues for the sites to provide some tutoring before, during, or after school, some compensation to teachers to kind of go above and beyond and helping those kids connect and stay on a positive learning path. The quarantine piece is frustrating. It's one of those things that continues to be conversations about. I know I'll be in a meeting tomorrow as one of about 10 or 12 superintendents invited to talk with the county, and they will continue to hear that our priority is to keep kids in school. And we very much want them to consider, strategies that help us do that, reducing the number of kids that have to be quarantined, or coming up with some strategies that allow them to stay in school, especially if they continue to be asymptomatic. So it's one of those things that I'm advocating for with fellow colleagues around the county to continue to improve. But quarantine is a Maricopa County responsibility, and then we comply and exclude when they make that decision. The next few slides are an opportunity to highlight some of those priority focus areas that I developed in transition to take this role as superintendent, as well as what the governing board has approved and will evaluate me on at the end of the year. I don't know why that's not moving forward. Let's try again. All right, so 3 priority focus areas include stabilizing and reinvigorating the stakeholder relationships, rebuilding trust in our community or the perceived lack of trust, as well as improving transparency or the perceived lack of transparency. Even if they are perceived, they're real to me, and we need to work on those across the district in all of our stakeholder groups, in all of our employee responsibilities, in our interactions with students, with our parent community and the community at whole. The first goal that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody is to focus on teaching and learning and expand those student achievement opportunities through a continuous improvement and equity lens. What we mean by equity is that we want to do what it takes to help all kids succeed. Every child comes to us with a different set of needs, skills, knowledge, and our team of teachers and support staff and administrators are going to work very hard to meet those individual needs. We're going to focus on creating some new strategies that address academic learning and performance. Things like our hope to implement Project Momentum at 5 schools, such as North Canyon High School, Vista Verde Middle School, Eagle Ridge, Desert Springs, and Echo Mountain Intermediate. Those are 5 schools that we're working diligently on with the governor's office to implement Project Momentum. Comes with some significant dollars and commitment to professional development to help us kind of get over the hump in performance. We've also, as I mentioned earlier, focused on giving administrators tools to help teachers be better in their craft. That Teacher Clarity Playbook I mentioned at the beginning is one of those, as well as our 9-12 ACT readiness, a focus on that, as well as I think we have 7 sites that we're working on multi-tiered system of supports. So we have a lot of strategies that we're creating to address general academic performance improvement across the district. We also want to review and monitor our first year district literacy plan that's implemented now. This is a 3-year plan. It aligns with our English language arts guaranteed and viable curriculum and implementation. We're also looking at and implementing our screening and diagnostic tools, as well as adding really great reading program as a tier 2 intervention as requested by our reading specialist at non-title schools. So we're really excited about our efforts in this area to improve literacy across the district. We're also going to continue to develop some strategies to alleviate some academic achievement in math and science. We clearly know that this year we want to finalize our commitment to 9-12 common final assessments across the district. So like classes at the high school have like final assignments, final assessments. And we also want to create a new integrated science course. We have a 9-12 math adoption going on, and I know Dr. Corson will talk about some of this later, as well as a common observation tool in mathematics, so our administrators can use that as a new walkthrough instrument when conducting classroom visits. The second goal is to develop a process to reboot and complete a strategic plan guiding the district for the next 5+ years. I've been talking in some of our circles that this has to be our journey 2030. This guides us, and all of our decisions should be aligned with the strategic plan. This has been a stagnant, dust collecting kind of document the last 3 or 3.5, almost 4 years. And so we need to update that. And our goal is that by probably by March, we'll have taken the opportunity to develop a mission and vision, make those things align with our strategic plan. And that in the end, we finish with a portrait of a graduate, what we expect graduates to finish with and more, not just the minimum, but beyond, as well as some broad strategic goals that will guide the district. Some of them are probably 4 to 5, maybe 6 buckets that will guide us in our decision-making for decisions when it comes to revenues and expenditures. And we also want to develop strategies to gather a greater voice throughout a strategic plan plot process. So whether you're involved in the core team or the strategic planning committee, the information on that work will be provided through our marketing communications, through our website, as well as opportunities for the greater community to see the progress and weigh in with input along the way. Special thanks to Dr. Jaros, who will be my co-pilot on this project. Goal number 3 is to improve our communication with parents and community. Some of our objectives include to replace or improve our mass communication system. Some of you know that as school messenger right now, as well as adding texting capabilities. We also are going to re-image our website and our social media platforms to simplify and improve the end user experience. And we eventually will consider ITC facilitating the work around teacher websites, but that's probably phase 2. We do hope to have, I know that Matt will talk about that a little bit later in Marcom updates, that we want to develop some strategies to communicate to all curriculum standards and materials for the public review. We want to publish these core materials for parent view. It's important that you see what we're using. Certainly want to enhance our customer service experience, and we both for internal and external stakeholders. And we have a couple of assistant superintendents who will guide our work on that. And then finally, we want to increase opportunities for greater student and parent feedback. We want to re-implement our parent satisfaction survey that's been missing for a couple of years. We want to develop some evaluation feedback for principals and COA members regarding cabinet and superintendent leadership. I want to expand some of the things that I do with our Student Leadership Council in gathering feedback from them as well, as some examples. And the 4th goal is to continue adherence to the principles of fiscal responsibility, improve our stakeholders' understanding of the district's revenues and expenditures. This is important as we work to rebuild trust in our community and improve transparency. We want to make sure that we're educating our community. We want to develop some strategies to explain, post, and or share the comprehensive financial report. Arizona is a very complicated funding formula. When I talk to superintendents across the nation and they find out, and compare their buckets of revenue, sometimes less than a half a dozen to ours, as many as 50+. that have all kinds of rules and parameters on whether they can be used interchangeably or not is confusing. It's difficult for most administrators to explain. We want to try to put that in lay terms, but make it clear and understandable to our parents and community as well. You'll probably see us develop a popular annual report as a way to do that, as well as some small chunks of video vignettes throughout the year. Next, we want to develop some strategies to enhance our board and community understanding of budgetary matters. And then finally, develop a 3 to 4 year facilities plan with a lens toward 10 years. We want to continue to look down the road. We can very easily get distracted and caught up in the day-to-day struggles and challenges and hurdles that we face, whether they be COVID related or not. But in the end, we have to keep our eye down the road, dealing with what we have in front of us today, but planning for the future. All righty. The next opportunity is for us to share a little bit about some of the division updates. And I'd like to ask that Dr. Jarris be unmuted so that he could help us. Why the cursor is not working.
Steve, you should be able to unmute.
I'm unmuted. I'm just waiting for the slide to come up.
All right, there you go, Dr. Jarris.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I work primarily with the elementary schools, although some of my areas overlaps all of the schools. In particular, some of the things we're working on this year is implementing MTSS, which is multi-tier systems of support. At 7 of our schools. Last year, we were part of a state grant to start working on this as a district and finding a way to slowly implement it into our schools. And basically, the MTSS is the key word there is system. It's ensuring that our schools have a system for how they approach instructional and behavioral approaches to their students. And so we know what all students are getting through our Tier 1 support, and that there's some cohesion and consistency across the school and grade levels with that. And then we know for those students who struggle, what our Tier 2 instruction and approaches look like, and then what our Tier 3 looks like. And so we have 7 schools that we are building support for that for this particular school year. That kind of follows in then with general overall support for principals. I work closely with our principals and in their leadership of their campuses. And in particular, this year, we're talking about continuing how to approach leadership to increase student achievement. And a part of that, a big part of that conversation is decreasing variance, meaning, we again should have some consistency across our schools and across our district and how we are supporting our students. If you think about it from an instructional standpoint, at the primary grades, for example, literacy, it should be a guessing game for children in terms of what the vocabulary or what the language is that we're using to talk about literacy from kindergarten to first grade to second grade. There needs to be some cohesion in their planning. It helps the students out, and it also helps us across the school for them to be able to support each other because we're all using the same language. And so we're going to work on different ways to how to measure what's happening in the classrooms and make sure that we are narrowing that range a little bit so we're better supporting our students. The VIP program, for those of you who are not familiar, Volunteers in Paradise, it's a fantastic program that was just given credentials by the state. And we have over 130 volunteers who typically come to us and get trained and work in different schools. And we're looking at increasing not only the number of volunteers we have, but their impact. And Marisha Garrity leads that group, and she's been working with Jean Copen, our Director of Assessment, to identify not only some specific schools where we perhaps see the need for some additional support, but also which areas that we want to support students in, specific grade levels or ELA standards or math standards, so that we can really maximize the impact of that community support that we have for our students. And then also aligning the efforts of our student support professionals. We have counselors, social workers, social emotional specialists at our schools, and their jobs all kind of have an overlap, and many of those positions were added in the past 2 years. And so we're working to continue to define how their roles overlap, how they support each other, and make sure that we have, a system in place where all the adults and students in the school are familiar with, what the path is for responding to a student who needs support in that area. So those are some of the highlights of what we're working on in my department.
Thank you, Dr. Chiris. Ms. Berrigan, would you share with us some of the business operations previews for the year?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Good morning, everybody. Business operations does cover a number of areas, so if you give me a few extra moments, I'll go through each of those. We'll start with finance. Currently, we are undergoing our audit for the fiscal year that just ended, fiscal year 2021. They're literally in the office right next door to me, but so far, so good. They'll be back again in October to complete the audit, and that's just typical for us this time of year. We do our regular work, and then we've got the auditors here to entertain on occasion. Additionally, we implemented a new accounting software last fiscal year. It's called Vision Software. If you've heard anybody that works for the district speak about that. Obviously when you make changes like that, there's some upsetment. People liked the old system, but we do believe it's a good system, and it puts us in a position where virtually every other district in the state works on this same new system. And so it allows us to be able to reach out to some of our other school districts when we're having issues or questions, or seeing how somebody else is dealing with those things. So we continue to implement that and make sure that that's running smoothly. The next piece is facilities. We've always got our general maintenance going on, and that keeps us very busy. One thing in particular this year, maybe a little bit more higher profile than in other years that you may be hearing about, is our air conditioning. And just as a reminder, our air conditioning units are running nonstop throughout the day when we've got students there. So even if the air is not calling for cool air, or the unit's not calling for cool air, it's calling for air so that we're circulating in that fresh air from the outside as part of our mitigation strategies. That certainly puts some wear and tear and tires or AC systems out, but we know that that's important as a mitigation strategy. And so we just continue to deal with those air conditioning units as any issues arise. And our team's been great about that. We have had to engage with some vendors to help support with that this year. Just the issues are a little bit more than a typical year, but we always have AC issues at the beginning of the year, of course. And then we have our ongoing bond projects. We've got a lot of them going on. I'm not going to list all of them, but just wanted to hit a couple of highlights for folks. We have Sky Crossing that has opened. If you haven't been by there yet, please feel free to drive by, and it looks fantastic. We will have a grand opening for them at some point when the weather cools down and it's a little more comfortable for folks to be there. Palomino Intermediate and Shadow Mountain both had roofing projects. The Palomino project's done and the Shadow Mountain project is nearly done. It's important to keep those roofs in good condition when we have crazy storms like we did the other night. Roadrunner has been completed and rebuilt, and that is looking wonderful as well. The remodel for the Performing Arts Center at Pinnacle High School is underway and will be underway for the good part or the better part of the year. And in case you don't know, or as a reminder from previous years, whenever we're working on a school site's Performing Arts Center, then the other schools work with that school to ensure that they have the ability to have access to their Performing Arts Center so that they're not losing out on any of the opportunities that they can take advantage of with the Performing Arts Center. We did some upgrades at the Star Tech campus within Paradise Valley High School, and there'll be some continued upgrades for that as well. And then we've just had some asphalt projects across the campus. Some of those are repair so that we don't have to replace, and then some of those are replaced just because they've gotten so old and our sun beats down on everything. So just a few of the bond projects that we have going, and we'll continue to have bond projects going from our 2019 authorization. Thank you to our community, obviously, for passing that and allowing us to be able to make these improvements to our campuses and show our community that we do care about our campuses and taking care of them. Next is food and nutrition. If you don't know, our kids are eating free again for this school year 21-22. That has been approved through federal authorization. So we get fully reimbursed at the free rate, which is the highest rate by the federal government for any kid that eats, regardless of their free and reduced lunch or poverty status. We have had an uptick in our participation, and Camille Unruh is our director for food and nutrition. She did a comparison from 2019. So if we can remember way back then, 2 years ago, at the beginning of 2019, before COVID happened, she compared it to that point in time and the beginning of this school year. And she's serving 800 more meals per day than she was at that point in time. So even pre-COVID, she's serving 800 more meals today. And we like to hear that kids are getting fed. That makes them happy and healthier throughout the day for their education process. And just a little interesting note, we have some positions here in the district through our food and nutrition department that are employed through the district, and then some that were employed through a third party. And we continue to use that third party to help make sure we're as fully staffed as possible. But we did move some of those positions in-house this year. Camille was hearing when we had our job fairs that folks wanted to be an employee of the district and receive the benefits that come along with the district, such as the retirement that the district offers and things of that nature. So we decided to move some of those positions in-house and see if people took advantage of that, and indeed they did. We do still have a couple of those in-house positions open, and so the reason I bring that up today is if you know anybody, please feel free to have them apply. Which brings me to transportation. If you know of anybody with a CDL or who's interested in getting a CDL, please have them apply. Have them talk to me, to Brandon, our director for transportation, or anybody. We will get them in. We are in desperate need of drivers. And there's actually, I shared an email this morning of an article that talks about a nationwide bus driver shortage for school districts. And there's, various reasons why that I won't bore you with, but there's certainly a shortage, and we are pushing our transportation department hard. And we don't want to push them too hard and lose any more drivers, but we're doing the best we can. And we appreciate our parents' patience with that, especially in these first few weeks of school that always take a little bit of time to settle down regardless. I will say they had a great first day. This is not often the case, but I'm still on transportation. Sorry. We did have a great first day in transportation. We did not, I don't say lose. Some districts will say we don't lose a kid. We never lose a kid. We may misplace them for a minute or two. We did not misplace any students this year. And that is a huge feat for a district of our size. The night before we started school, some of my counterpart school districts had begun already and shared that this was the worst start of the year for transportation for them yet. We actually had a terrific first day, and chief in that is the fact that all kids were taken home. Now, some of them were a little bit late, but as we've said, that's typical of transportation for the first day, and we, tough with being short of drivers. So things are rocking and rolling in transportation. Okay, now we can move on. I think next is purchasing. Yes. So in purchasing, our wonderful Claudia Leon has taken retirement and moving on to the private sector to work for a company called 1GPA that helps with cooperative contracts for school districts. So we have found a replacement for her. She's a wonderful director currently serving in the Scottsdale Unified School District. Her name is Mrs. Eva Calles, and she will begin with us on August 30th. And we will have a few days of overlap with her and Claudia, so that should be able to help support a smooth transition. And Claudia has also very kindly agreed, along with her new employer, 1GPA, to continue to support the district, should we need her support. And there will be questions, so we appreciate that opportunity from them. And so those really cover all of the departments, but if we move on to some of the goals that Dr. Bales had talked about, we will be working on some customer service standards and training. Dr. Holmes from HR, and then Matt Droege in our marketing and communications department, as well as myself. We have a meeting, I think it's later this week, if not next week, to begin to start to talk about what that's going to look like for the district moving forward. And then really some areas that fall a little bit more under my specific purview in the work that I do in the financial transparency, which is critically important to me. I live in a community, I am a taxpayer in a community, and I expect fiscal transparency in my community. So I know that you all expect the same, and we want to provide that to you. We are doing a few things. First of all, we're sharing some of the things that we already do that we maybe haven't shared before. And our finance folks receive various awards that, maybe you all didn't know about. So we're posting some of that on our website now. There's certificate of excellences from the Association of School Business Officials International, as well as GASB, which provides financial standards across the United States for public agencies. So we're going to post those awards on our website. Actually, I believe they already are posted, and make sure that everyone is aware of the fact that we received those awards and we're doing good work to receive those awards. Also, I'm working on some opportunities to post additional bond and override information on our website. As I said earlier, we have our wonderful community that is extraordinarily supportive of us via those measures. And we want to make sure that you guys understand what we're doing with those dollars. We are doing good things. We don't want to assume, anyone assuming otherwise. And the best way to do that is telling them what we're doing. And so that is our full intention, to be able to share that information on the website as a quick place for folks to look at that. We're also going to engage in what's called a popular annual financial report. I don't know if you knew there was such a thing. I learned about that several years ago, or called a PAFR. We always do our comprehensive annual financial report, but that's 170-ish pages of some pretty detailed financial information that not everybody is going to want to parse through. So we find that a potential for the popular annual financial report might be a good opportunity for those who just want a quick brief of what's going on financially in the district and how the funds are being used. It's sort of a nice middle ground for folks to feel like we're informing them, but we're not trying to bombard them with information. So we will be engaging in a popular annual financial report. And then finally, we're going to work, and Dr. Bales and I have talked about it a little bit already, but we'll develop some short videos that share financial information with groups such as yourself, with UPC, with our staff, and any other stakeholders. So keep an eye out for some videos coming up, and feel free to email myself or Dr. Bales if you have any topics that you'd like us to cover in those videos. So I did say mine would take a little longer because I had all those areas to cover, but I am done, and I hope that that was informative.
Thank you, Jill. Really appreciate the attention to detail and helping our community understand all the work that your teams do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Holmes, can you jump in and share with us some of the anticipations in HR this year?
Thank you very much, Dr. Bales. It's great to be here. I'd like to start off with the staffing update, as I will tell you that our big question last year is, how is the pandemic going to affect teacher choices to remain in the profession? It was something that we were concerned about here in PV, but it was a statewide concern, and actually I would probably say a national concern. So I'm happy to tell you that seemed to be comparable to last year. We hired about 250 teachers through the summer. And when we look at vacancies, total vacancies, and our ability to fill them, we found it to be very comparable to the prior year. So that is a good thing. Our highest need areas were in the area of special education, which has been typical for some years now. And then not surprisingly, new to our challenge was nurses. And considering everything that the healthcare professionals have gone through the past year and a half, it is not surprising that we had more than expected vacancies in that area. On our ESP, or our classified side, our greatest area of need is in the area of paraprofessionals. So those are aides that work with our students with special needs, followed by bus drivers. They would be number two, but paras are by far and away our number one need. So I would be remiss as a former principal who used to beat the bushes in my own community looking for parents to fill these positions, if I didn't pitch to you, if you have the interest and ability to fill one of those positions, we probably have one at a school near you. On the certified side, there are some projects that we are taking on this year that we'll be spending some time on. One, we are looking at developing an in-house certification program specifically for special education. It's our highest need in terms of challenge in filling those positions. And it's something that the Department of Education recently, within the last few years, has allowed districts to start developing. So that is something that we are exploring and hoping to develop over the course of this year. We also have been working with one of our partners who recently initiated a J1 cultural exchange program, which gives us the ability to hire teachers from abroad. And this summer, when we had quite a few vacancies in special ed specifically, we were able to identify 15 candidates that we could recruit from abroad. Now you can imagine the hiring process is not as quick as if they were lived here locally. So we are still working on getting them here and in those positions, but we're excited that that new program is off to a good start. And then we are also considering more formally developing a Grow Your Own program. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we know we've got high school students that may be interested or may haven't even thought about a career in teaching. And so we are looking to engage out of human resources more closely with our graduating seniors on a path to become a teacher. We do have an ed professions program in CTE that does quite a bit to expose them. But one of the things that we're missing is helping them connect the dots between that particular program, how they're going to get through it in college, and potentially be employed along the way to eventually become a teacher. So that's a project that we are working on. And then finally, as Jill had just mentioned, we are teaming up to look at customer service standards, as we want you as parents and our employees, when they engage with departments and or schools, we want that experience to be excellent and consistent across the district. So that's a goal and an undertaking that we are going to take on this year. And that is your update out of human resources.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. Much appreciated. And I would echo your call for the community to step in and help support some of those special education children that need a para-educator. It's a very fulfilling experience to know that you're helping somebody else. And while it's not a career or even for the pay, it's for the community service. So if you have the time and you have the energy to help give back, think of it as an expanded volunteer opportunity with a little compensation. So thank you. Our next is Marketing and Communications Update, our new director, Matt Droege. Matt, would you share with us some of the updates and anticipations in Marcom this year?
Absolutely. I'm really excited to be able to talk about some marketing and communications updates. Let's start first with the website. So behind the scenes, we're working to refresh the district website. We're hoping to have that launched second semester here in 2022. Just to let you know the process that we've gone through thus far and where we're headed in the future as we build the new website. We had an initial feedback committee that got to listen to some presentations from potential vendors, and then to help us narrow down our priorities, we met with 6 different focus groups representing different stakeholder groups. So we appreciate everyone's time in helping us identify some common themes throughout those focus groups and then narrow down our priorities so we can pick the vendor. Once that vendor is picked, we'll work with them on the roadmap, the timeline for building a new website. But I'm really excited about that. It's a heavy lift, but this will be the 3rd organization that I've helped build websites for. So I'm a glutton for punishment, I suppose, but I'm very excited about that. Along with, kind of to go hand in hand with the new website and just overall communication, is text messaging, which we'll be rolling out this year. We're in the process of testing that text messaging capability now. It'll start out at the district level, and then once we have the process in place, those will roll out to school messages as well. So to receive text message notifications, you'll just want to make sure that your contact information is up to date in Infinite Campus. So once we start rolling those out more widespread, you can opt in to get those text messages. The next exciting thing that we're working on in marketing and communications is a refresh or a reimagining of the district newsletter. If you already received the newsletter, you may have noticed it has a different look this year. And we're committed to continuing throughout the year with monthly newsletter editions, as well as a handful of special edition newsletters throughout the year. So that's a really great place to get resources, articles, and news from the district, as well as a place to get curated news coming out of our schools. Anything that is not included in the newsletter is included on the district website. So if you want even more PV Schools news, make sure to check out pvschools.net. And then the last thing is we are continuing our use of social media. We gave all of our accounts a bit of a refresh over the summer, and we're working on ways to better use each of the platforms. If you've noticed, if you're following us on social media, you may have noticed that over the past month or so, Twitter has taken more of a new news slant. So if you want a district news feed, Twitter is the place to be. If you want to interact with the district on social media, Facebook is where you should be at. And then Instagram is a platform that we'll be using to show off all of the great things visually going on in PV Schools. So there's a reason to follow all three. If those are social media platforms that you already use, you can find us at PV Schools. And that's all I have for marketing and communications.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Dr. Corson, tell us a little bit about curriculum instruction.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm happy to do that. As Dr. Bales mentioned, we're in year one of implementing a district literacy plan. This 3 to 5 year plan was developed with the shared belief that all teachers are teachers of literacy. It provides goals ranging from building strong foundational literacy skills in our primary grades through students acquiring the literacy skills required for college and career readiness. We're really excited by the work of that team in putting together and implementing that particular plan. We're also implementing new K-8 social studies curriculum resources, and implementation includes providing professional development to our teachers on these resources, embedding parts of these resources within our curriculum maps so there is alignment with our state standards, and continuing to work with our stakeholders to assess these resources within the next 3 years of the adoption. This year, we're also in the process of selecting and adopting high school math curriculum resources. We have a group of teachers, administrators, and parents who were selected by their selective groups to serve on this committee. And as this committee progresses, we'll be sharing out communication to the UPC, providing updates on the district website, and leveraging our community newsletter, including when and where to review these materials before the committee makes its recommendations. Dr. Janice Mack, our science curriculum specialist, is working with a high school science group of teachers to develop a 9th grade integrated science course that will be implemented next year. This course comes really as a result of changes in our science standards and a way to streamline our science sequence across all of our high schools. With the ACT now becoming our high school state accountability test, in addition to college entrance exam, our assessment and curriculum departments are working with teachers to help our students better prepare for the ACT. We're crosswalking our state standards with ACT content and giving students practice opportunities so they are more comfortable with the ACT content and format. As alluded earlier also, we continue to break down our state standards for both students and teachers to help us define the topics and skills that are to be taught at each grade level for each of our content areas. The more clarity we have in understanding our standards, the more effective we are at increasing student achievement across our state tests. Our principals, instructional coaches, and teachers continue to collaborate through professional learning communities to zero in on student learning and what that looks like. And then finally, our district and schools are leveraging elementary and secondary emergency relief fund. You may have heard this referred to ESSER funding to support our teaching and learning. And these include plans for after-school programs, additional staff to support classroom instruction, and check-in support for students who may be quarantined or out of school for other reasons. And that's just a few of the things that we're working on.
Thank you, Dr. Corson. And Mr. Long, to wrap up our division updates in instructional leadership secondary.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to help lead our 712 principals. It's very appropriate that I follow Dr. Corson and curriculum instruction because, as I always share with him, our wagons are certainly hitched. So as we look at our school leaders at the secondary level and supporting and increasing strategies for helping our students, we're really centering on what we inspecting what we are expecting. There are regular meetings with department leads with the curriculum department, but sometimes that information ends up being siloed. So we're making a greater effort to ensure that our school leaders are synthesizing that information and going into classrooms and having discussions and collaboration efforts to improve what's happening in our curriculum department as well to support the teaching and learning process. With that said, we are going to focus on one particular core area this year. Even though we'll be focusing on all areas, we'll make a greater effort in math instruction. We've collaborated with the curriculum department to create a pilot and an observation tool so that we can have some consistency across the district. That consistency begins with the conversations, things that we are doing well, things that we need to improve upon. That way we have common expectations across the district as we look at an area that nationally is a difficult area, mathematics, but through the pandemic, some of those gaps widened a bit. So it's an appropriate time to begin some focused observations, collaboration, especially as we begin looking at adopting additional math curriculum resources. And in addition, ensuring that we're providing professional development that meets the needs of teachers, but also professional development for school leaders on what should be happening in the classroom and how we can assist and what we should be looking for. With that said, in terms of school improvement planning, we know that there needs to be improvement in our ELA, and in so doing, that just does not happen in the English classroom. That has to happen across other curricular areas, including science and mathematics. And what does that look like? A number of our schools have participated in our Keys to Literacy training. So as school leaders, we will be working to bring all of that together to ensure that our ELA is also stressed upon in our mathematics and science classes. As Dr. Bales mentioned earlier, we have 5 schools who will be participating in Project Momentum, and that is a public and private partnership that's administered through the governor's office. And Project Momentum is not a canned program. What it does acknowledge is the amount of time and hard work it takes to unwrap standards and to plan to ensure that we're meeting the needs of students to move that needle. So what this program does is provide tools and resources and additional funding so that collaboration can take place at the school level, in addition to providing principal leadership as well to improve student achievement. And those are some of the things that we will focus on at the secondary level.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Appreciate you and your efforts. All right.
Okay, we did get a few questions submitted in advance, and then we also got a couple questions in response to some of the things that members of cabinet said. So I'll just ask a couple questions, and Dr. Bales or cabinet, whoever wants to address them. One question was, I know Dr. Jarris was talking about English language learner students. So there's a question about volunteering to help those kids. And also, what kind of additional supports do those students receive?
Dr. Jarris had to go off to another meeting, so I'll try to answer that, Kia. Could you repeat the question, because it was 2 parts?
Sure. So it's about English language learners. So if a parent wanted to volunteer to support that population specifically, what steps should they take to get involved with that? And then what additional supports are provided to those students to make sure they're successful?
Dr. Bales,
are you back? All right, awesome.
Yeah, so our English language learners receive support through the programming that's been prescribed by the state in terms of the amount of time that is committed to learning the English language. So depending on how many students are at a particular school, that'll change the structure of what that looks like. But every school has a system set up for addressing the specific language needs of those students. As far as how to best support them, if you're a volunteer, I would begin by talking to our VIP program with Marisha Garrity and going through that route, because Marisha is very well connected with the schools in terms of identifying where the most need is. And some of this with volunteers does come into play with, a receptive environment as well. There are some teachers that work really well with volunteers, and there are some who are, maybe especially some newer teachers who they're not quite comfortable there yet. So that would be a good spot with working with our VIP program in terms of getting some training and then being placed in a spot where they're going to get the most have the most impact.
I'll also add out of human resources, there is a volunteer application. If you actually go to the jobs area of our website and search on the keyword volunteer, you'll see two different applications, one for volunteerism in general and the other for VIP, as Dr. Karras was commenting on.
Great, thank you. Another question was about the Grow Your Own Teacher program that Dr. Holmes mentioned. Where could parents find more information about that? Will that be on the website?
Well, it doesn't exist. So it's something that we're exploring. We've had some initial conversations internally about that. So we actually have to develop what does that look like? How are we going to engage? And then how are we going to communicate that out? So I would say at this time, stay tuned.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll keep an eye out for that. And then there was a question about the district's literacy plan. Maybe how we support students that are struggling in the ELA area. Maybe just briefly a couple supports that might be out there for students.
Yeah, I certainly can answer that. As Dr. Bales mentioned, one of the programs that we're implementing this year as part of a Tier 2 intervention. So that's directly to support students who are struggling readers at our primary level, is a program called Really Great Reading. And it really focuses on phonemic awareness and phonemic development, for which we know that a lot of our struggling readers in those primary grades would benefit from. So that's a systemic program that we're implementing across all of our schools to support those learners. At some of our title schools, you may see that particular program being embedded within their regular day instruction for all students. And because it's a valuable program, especially in large populations where there are significant gaps with ELA. So that's one intervention tool that we are using to support our struggling readers.
Great, thank you so much. There was also a question that a parent sent in about substitute teachers. We know that this has been a challenge in previous years, in regular years, just having enough substitutes available. What kind of status are we looking at right now?
So we actually have just transitioned we were contracting our substitutes through a third party. We've actually just recently brought them all back in-house. Transitioned them to the employees of the district again. We currently have 275 with another 50 that are in process. So that is a good number. As I talked to our substitute coordinator, she is pleased with that number, feels like we're in good shape. We will actually continue to interview and hire. And then the outstanding question, which is really challenging to predict, is okay, we've hired, now will they take positions? And that is always the nature of a substitute. They work when they want to work. So but we do constantly work with them on opportunities, both long-term and short-term, to try to get all of our positions filled.
Okay, thank you. We got a couple questions about the transition to high school and why lockers are not available to students at our high school campuses and also our middle schools. There's been some concerns about the amount of materials kids need to carry every day. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Mr. Long, would you like to continue our conversation?
I certainly would. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. It is my understanding that there is a class set of books that students can use in the classroom, and that in most situations, students can sign out a book that they can leave at home. In addition to that, there are some electronic offerings for some of the textbook to minimize the weight of carrying a backpack with so many books in it. So that is the reason, one of the reasons that there's no lockers in the building. I'm sure that years ago there was some safety concerns and things kept in lockers, so they were removed. And this was the answer to that. With that said, I know that some students like their textbook in their hands, so that becomes a choice, but we also provide some options. I know that particularly at one of our large high schools, there are a few classes where that is not an option, but in most situations, that is one of the ways to mitigate the heavy backpacks is to leave the book at home, use the one in class or the electronic version to minimize that. We want our kids safe and not hurting their backs. So that was one of the ways of doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Long. And I think that Dr. Corson has also indicated that, our commitment has been to try to provide ebooks as well. So they had electronic access in all of our adoptions over the last 4 or so years. So we're really trying to help them have access conveniently at home.
Okay, thank you. We got a question about Health for School nurses, because we know that school nurses are taking on a lot of additional responsibilities and tasks right now. Is there any discussion about hiring an assistant for the school nurse type position, or what kind of supports do the nurses have within their school communities?
I will share with you that that is something out of human resources that we have been discussing is researching models of how to employ healthcare in our schools, and we're gonna start by looking at our surrounding districts to identify what are other districts doing that may be a different model than what we're employing. So that is on our radar.
Dr. Holmes, I'd also like to add that we are a district that, unlike many others, that does provide a full-time nurse at all our campuses and some support. And in the past, we have typically added some para-assistant, nursing assistants based on programs. So where we have campuses that have some specialized programs in special education, and there's an increased workload there, we do have and have added. But yes, you're absolutely right. There's an additional amount of work on our nurses, on really our entire administrative team as a result of COVID this year and last year.
Thank you. So as you can imagine, I did receive a lot of questions about masks prior to the letter that came out yesterday afternoon. And then I did receive quite a few follow-up questions now that the mask mandate information has gone out. So along those lines of COVID, there were some questions about the district dashboard. How exactly is that information collected and make it from the school site to the dashboard itself? And if parents feel that there's a discrepancy in the numbers that they're seeing on the dashboard, who should they contact?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I alluded to earlier in that first slide, I talked about the COVID dashboard information. First, data is collected through SNAP, which is our electronic records program that the nurses use. And we currently capture that data on Monday morning. Those inaccuracies in the Monday, Tuesday dashboard data can occur in a variety of ways. I talked about the numbers being fluid because not everybody makes a deadline in submitting it, to the district's student services department and MARCOM, who kind of collectively take the information and then get it published. So there's a chain of command in making sure that people meet the deadlines. If we receive notification of a positive case late Friday night or over the weekend, the nurse might not be able to enter into SNAP until Monday after we've pulled the data. So that might be one reason. Also, a parent might not notifies us that their child tested positive last week. They've been out of school, but they just never made the phone call. And in both of these situations, those entries will be captured on the dashboard in the next available publishing. And as I said, we're working to make that happen on Mondays and Thursdays on that dashboard now.
Great, thank you. I think that offers some clarification. So another question was in regards to sports and AIA. And as we move forward in this COVID world, who is making determinations about participation and also spectator attendance at sports? Is that going to be AIA, or is the district going to have their own policy?
So our district athletic director participates in regular meetings with AIA. AIA has indicated they're kind of going to stay out of the masking business or anything COVID related per se. They're leaving things up to individual school districts to design what they feel will make their students safe for participation. So currently, right now, we're still following the same guidelines as previously administered last school year in terms of participation and attendance. So whether as a district later we decide, depending on the climate, whether we limit the amount of people into events and so forth, will be put upon our district and other districts. There will not be a mandate from AIA. The only guidance from AIA is to follow, let's say if we have two teams playing, if they have different guidelines in terms of numbers of students or even masking, that we adhere to those policies of that school district when we work with them in terms of participation.
As in the homeschool.
As in the homeschool, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So there was another question about, and I'm going to combine a couple questions here, quarantining students for exposure. And I know you've indicated that the county determines the process for quarantining. Can you just sort of explain the difference for a vaccinated student versus an unvaccinated student? Because we might need some clarity with that. And then also moving forward, if we find there are a large number of students quarantined either from a classroom or from a school site or a grade level, what would be the process the district will use to determine if an entire grade or perhaps a school needs to be closed temporarily?
Sure, great questions. I'll answer the second question first. In terms of the decision-making for closing a classroom or grade level or entire school is done in collaboration with the county. And then there are our teams working with the county that eventually make a recommendation to the superintendent to make that final decision. We know based on some of our neighboring districts, the goal is to keep kids in school. And we have had around us some districts that have had to close a grade level and a classroom. I know that Peoria's closed a classroom. I think Deer Valley's closed at least a grade level. And so they've had it. Scottsdale hasn't had any yet. But everybody's anticipating that is going to be decisions that have to be made, but it's done in collaboration with the county and then recommendations to the superintendent. In terms of quarantining for vaccinated students, when contact tracing is conducted, a student that has been vaccinated and is asymptomatic does not have to quarantine. If a student has been vaccinated and they have symptoms, then they would. But if they are been vaccinated, they do not need to quarantine if they're asymptomatic.
Thank you very much. And I know, if parents have questions, I know there's a lot of information available on the district website.
Absolutely. And encourage them to go to that PV prepared plan. It's the most up-to-date document as we continue to adjust and make changes.
Great, thank you. So yesterday, the governor took some steps to address schools. Do you have any, can you comment a little bit on some of those executive orders and the financial piece that may impact our district?
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions, Kia, and happy to address that. The governor did make some announcements yesterday, and it's interesting how it was packaged and presented. These $163 million in his first investment to increase per pupil funding, of course, with some parameters through what's called the Education Plus Grant Up program. That is in many ways has different components in it and would not impact our district. We were not going to qualify for that. Those are his discretionary dollars from ESSER, as we have explained earlier, ESSER. And so he has those discretionary dollars, and some of those parameters that were already in place for that money, the criteria had been met or not met, and we had not met that criteria for that new money anyway, prior to his announcement. So we're not losing anything there. Now, he did discuss some relief programs for K-12 students, and there's a bunch of parameters around that relief in terms of expanding the ESAs, the educational scholarship accounts. And so, you know, that may have an impact, it may not. There are pretty specific parameters on qualifications for that. But right now, no announcements yesterday would financially penalize our district at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I did get a question that just popped up about testing. So I believe the district office is still a testing site that's available to families. Is that correct?
That is correct. We have drive-through testing, free drive-through testing, Monday through Friday, 7 to 4. Somebody correct me if that's wrong, but that's still available, and it does remain free, and the results are within 24 hours.
Is there any testing available at school sites?
There is. We actually have some Binex testing kits available in the nurse's office. These are immediate diagnostic results in about 15 minutes, and the nurses will selectively use those with parent permission, or the parents can administer them when we suspect that, you know, maybe it's not COVID related, but that people want to be safe and sure. You know as well as I do that, you know, sometimes little kids have stomach aches for a variety of reasons. But this might give us an opportunity to do a quick test with parent permission, determine that it's not COVID, that it truly is just a stomach ache, and we can keep them in class. That's really what we're trying to do here. We want to keep kids in school. It's important. We know that's what we do best. And so anything we can do to help kids remain in school, that's what we're committed to right now, because we just do not want to see classrooms, grade levels, or schools closed. Those would be absolute last criteria, and they're not something that any of us want to consider. I want to see kids in school and engaged in learning.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So for the final question, and this is what's become the $1 million question in the last 24 hours, not even that long. The mask mandate and the opt-out option for parents. There's a lot of concern that the opt-out option, that it's going to basically make the mask mandate ineffective and irrelevant. Do you have anything you'd like to share with us? I'm telling you that I've gotten a lot of concern.
No, it's a good question, Kia. And I'll begin by just quickly summarizing the things I stated in the beginning. You know, that we did develop a process, you know, similar in terms of communication and forms and criteria, just like some of the other districts around us did in the past few weeks. And so we use that as a model. We also look at, you know, what the criteria was for related experiences in terms of opt-out for vaccinations such as measles, mumps, and rubella and such. So we use those as guidelines. Now, I believe that, you know, we have done our very best to communicate our expectation that masks are required tomorrow. And there are a number of parents that have said that, listen, you require it, we'll support it. And but if it wasn't required, they weren't going to, you know, they weren't going to try to enforce something that they couldn't see and monitor themselves throughout the day. I believe our community will step up like the communities have in the other districts with a similar process and follow the expectation, and that we would have the similar type of percentage of opt-out that they do, and that people recognize that the goal here is to keep kids in school. And that's what we want to do. And if there are truly some medical, religious, or personal beliefs that prevent that, then fine. But you know, in the end, we want to do what we can to keep kids in school. Our emphasis needs to be on the expectation that we wear masks in our school buildings around kids. And I trust that, we have a community that cares. I know that as an elementary principal, our kids across this district and in years past go way out of their way to do things to help others in need. And then there's probably some fundraising efforts going on right now for the people in Haiti. I know that our secondary students have collected toiletries and socks for the homeless. And I think that if we recognize that as a community that cares about one another, there are things that we'll do for each other, even if we may not like it, because we know that we can have an impact, a positive impact on our community. And so I ask us to focus on the expectation to wear masks and to commit to helping us keep kids in school.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today and also to answer the questions, and Cabinet as well. Thank you all for being here and for answering parent questions and giving us some resources so that we can find additional information as we need it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I hope that people enjoyed a larger, more comprehensive kind of opening bell than maybe we've been used to in the past. It's a lot of information, but I hope it's all helpful in our efforts to build some improved trust and communication in the district. We want to be an open book and let you know what we're thinking. We may not always agree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. It is our commitment to focus on kids. And I want UPC membership to know that I value your input, that we will work together. I think it's still a stellar model across the state to have an organization like UPC that still has its challenges in representing nearly 30,000 students and families. It's hard as a large organization, as an umbrella organization, to have that voice because there will be different voices. And we're going to work to hear and listen and try to work towards consensus as we move forward. But I want to thank UPC for the opportunity to be here today. Together, we can do great things and continue to move PV along this journey of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am going to stop recording now.